to welcome all of you. Yeah, apologies. So on behalf of EFMA, I'm very glad actually to welcome all of you at this session. We are very pleased that finally, as a part of SME Banking community, we were able to put together a wonderful panel of speakers to deliver an event around agricultural banking. We believe it's a very important topic which hasn't been covered properly or is not very often covered properly in banking sector. And we hope that, you know, with the summer periods coming right now very soon or already being here, it's the right time to serve you with some fresh meal in the form of agricultural banking, or, you know, everything what we have, what is kind of fresh is coming from the agricultural segment. So shortly, you know, just to start about EFMA, I mean, many of you might have heard of us, but if we have anyone who haven't, we are a global banking association that tries to operate for its members in all geographies of the world. We try to be the biggest one and the only global financial services association that try to connect all the dots in the financial service sector, you know, concerning as well the key partners that we have with whom we are working, deliver the insights, organize some type of gatherings, networking, and connect the bankers in exchanging best practices. So this is what we have for today. I'll straight to the agenda. We have put together, as I mentioned, an outstanding panel of speakers, as you can see in front of you. So covering all the regions of the world, you know, from Europe all the way to Asia Pac, South Africa. So I guess we will have some really inspiring insights from this session. And last but not least, since we call this event SME Banking Coffee, feel free to grab a coffee. Feel free to listen to some inspiring insights, and especially have a comfort and a good even afternoon or morning for those who joined us actually from other geographies to enjoy some of the insights that we want to serve you. So we'll start right now with an overview of the trends directly from one of our good friends who used to be part of Swedbank in the past, but right now is heading the agricultural segment at Ludwig & Co in Sweden. And it's Per, who at the same time will take a role in the panel discussion to help us facilitate everything. So Per, I'm passing over to you to give us a bit perspective. Where do we stand? What are the key trends that we expect? And some of the perspectives as well that we can expect in agricultural banking soon.
Thank you, Lucas. Nice to having me here again, since I've been a frequent participant in the EFMA activities, being in the banking world for 20 years before, but now ending up in the advisory business instead within agriculture within Sweden. So I will try to, from my perspective then, try to bring in the trends that I tend to see right now. Some are recurring trends and some are new trends, of course. From the Nordic perspective, there has been, during the last 6 months, a significant rise in increased interest in agricultural land, forest land as an investment. There's a lot of discussion about inflation, and it has been very up on the agenda for the last 2 months, I would say. So we see an increased competition between active farmers and investors, where it's possible to invest in land, which might be affecting the cost of land or land lease going forward. From the other perspective, if we move in closer to the banking perspective, we find that a lot of our customers tend to be willing to do larger scale steps going forward now when they do their investments. At the same time, there is a counterproductive movement within banking from risk models and regulations that are narrowing the capability to take risk, I would say, for some perspectives. And also the ability and competence to be able to validate the larger investments is, of course, crucial and key going forward. When it comes to COVID effects, digitalization and distance relationship has been increasing, of course, that you all are familiar with. One of the key things that we see from an advisor perspective that has been an enhanced, boosted effect in distant relationship, remote advice, support, and interaction that we also have worked a lot with to try to meet in our organization and development agenda. Also, what we notice is that in this perspective, what companies tend to look after the cost. They also have raised their expectation on digital services, about pricing, I would say, also transparency, but also focus on smoothness and efficiency from economy perspective, handling their economy and the flows. And also we have seen change in customer buying behavior, move from restaurants to shops instead when it comes to grocery, which has changed the way people buy food and what kind of food and from what origination they come from, especially in the Nordics anyway. For the past time also there is a focus on food security, both on the demand and the consumption. It has been showing price effects, and also what we've seen as a part effect by COVID is also protectionism that also has raised the prices in a global perspective, maybe within the wheat production more than you expected from the levels of stock that you have. So this is interesting to see how food has become a more crucial product for political purposes. And the last one that we see a lot of discussions about, and also both banks and from a European perspective with taxonomy, where Eric will talk about a bit more about later on from Swedbank, my former employee. It's both from trackability to sort of trace where food comes from, how big footprint from a carbon perspective and so on, but also the taxonomy where you with legislation will tend to increase the costs to lend money if you aren't proactive or have a low carbon dioxide footprint. So they try to force the market through the banks, as of course is a very efficient way to do it, to make change in a fast and rapid way. And the third one is economic sustainability. That has also been a very hot topic from the perspective of if you should be able to provide with food and food security, then you also have to make sure that the producers and the companies producing the food in agriculture has to be profitable and also sustainable as in an economic perspective. So that is some of the most key trends from my perspective as an advisor within the agriculture and also close to the banks.
Thank you very much, Per. Very good, to set the atmosphere in the very beginning, what we can expect in the upcoming period of time. Let's have a look at one of the banking leader, even in European segment, concerning the agricultural, from BNP Paribas. We have asked Bartosz Urbaniak, who is heading the Agro Hub in CE and as well Africa region, to give us a bit more overview of what's their strategy in BGZ BNP Paribas, or I mean the whole BNP Paribas group itself. So Bartosz, hopefully you can hear us. You're here with us, and we look forward to have some of the inspirational, SME banking coffee insights.
Okay, don't put too much pressure on me. The good thing is that we have no coordination with Per, but I see that, let's say more or less the conclusion what I would like to share are pretty similar to that what Per showed. So just at least we are both in reading some trends and the tendencies. Well, you told who I am, and maybe I will add just to start this presentation that no matter what, but around 1 p.m. I'm hungry. And probably all of you have more or less the same feeling. And this is also the first my comment to the new normal or the situation after the pandemic. No matter it's happening, the people are eating and they will eat. So from that perspective, we can say that the agriculture is somehow bulletproof and agricultural banking is bulletproof for the crises like that. We probably also all people realize that we can manage without all those clothes which we used to buy, travels and other things, but we do not can manage without food. I think many of people also realize how the food is important in their life, what it means for their health, what it means for their lifestyle. Probably a lot of us was seeking for the meeting friends, which is usually around the food table. So on the one hand, we have, can we move to the next slide? So on the one hand, we have an information that for sure there will be no changes in that sense, that the food is simple, the fuel for the people. So we need that, and we will eat. But on other hands, does it mean that there will be no changes? Absolutely not. We need to consider the situation as it is, as a sort of the restart of the economies, which is led either by the global leaders or the country leaders. But we probably all see that leaders, thanks God, they would like to change a bit our reality, to set up a couple of the things which are lagging behind, like a climate and the environment. The agriculture is important there as one of the sector which is consuming 70% of the water, responsible for the 30% of the emission of the gases. That's the one hand. The another is that the agriculture is the only human beings activity which is able to have a positive impact if done properly. So if we start to consider something like we can call it an agriculture, climate agriculture, then we see that the agriculture or the farms are able to capture the gas. They can deliver us let's say something which will softening the impact for the of the weather for our lives. So I see that this new normal will bring us in terribly big changes for the bankers, and that will be driven by the three meta paths or changes. Which is, one is the climate and the environment, another is new trends, and the third one is technology application, and all of that has in some sense the beginning in the pandemic. So if we can move to the next page. The first of all, this is the good example of that is Green Deal, which is prepared by the European Commission. The restart of the European economies will try to, as it is set in the title, set up a new deal when the economy will be more climate friendly, or even the climate supportive and environmental supportive. That means terrible changes for the banks, huge investments for the people, and also a lot of the new things to be done in the banks, also in that sense that we probably will need to educate our clients, but also we will have to prove to the regulators, to the societies, that we really care about that. So we will need to measure the impact of the environment of our clients, of our institution, and have a good dialogue with that. In some sense, this circle is closed by the consumers, which are pushing also for the solutions and products which are supportive for the climate. So this is not only the, of course, not only the financial service, but this is also the questions coming from the society or the public, whether do we finance proper investments and do we support by the investments the proper changes in the world. So can we move to the another one? Okay, the part of the things, at least at that moment, how we see the new trends need to be delivered if we would like to survive. So just with such nutrition habits as it is now, with such a consumption mainly of the red meat, probably we will soon meet some issues with the feeding the world, and as well with the gas emission. So first, what we will discover very soon is change of the diet, and also the global shift of the industries from now the meat is mainly delivering the profits and the mass of the profit and the income in a food and agro. Then probably what we are just seeing now, and this is the first bullet on this on this page, the future is now. There are the studies which are saying that meat alternatives will be fully equal to the meat in coming 3 years. So that's the things which are happening. Well, I can see that also by the behavior of my children, and especially my daughter, how he changed his perception of the world within last 2 years. So between 19 and 21. However, this new generation, they are really sensitive for the climate. They really want to, let's say, start something new. So can we go for the next page? And then the technology. The technology delivered the new comfort for our clients, for our customers, and there is we will not find any explanation why we don't want to deliver them the same level of comfort as those when they were sitting at home. And we find out that almost majority, if not all, things can be set up remotely. So how we see the expectation, and this is not only in one country, but almost in the all countries, which in some sense I have a look on. The clients are expecting what was in a sense of the comfort during the pandemic, but with more, which will be coming from the, generally speaking, omni-channeling. So the client would like to have basically everything with the whole interaction in omni-channel. So on a mobile, in a branch, on the telephone, every possible medium or way. On the other hand, the technologies, and this is something which is not directly the technology, but this is something let's say the common permission that the technology is used for the mass processes. So just we see that in one of the countries we are very deep in financing the farming. It's around 40% of the market share, and we see that the clients are now very open to be monitored by the satellites and the banks like that. Before that, it was for them almost impossible to give permission on that. Now we see that approach and the changes which were during the pandemic get them familiar with the technologies, and they agree on that to use the technology for the things like the monitoring. But on the other hand, as I said, they also would like to have some comfort which is coming from the technology. So if we can jump to the last page. The future and this new normal will be full of changes. Probably we all do not fully realize what that means, but if we need to change the diet, when the foods start to be a sort of the quality of life, that there are the countries where the people are saying that 25% of the people is saying that they now, from the pandemic, 25% of the society is saying that they will take much more care about that, what they need, what they eat, and they would like to eat materially more healthy than before. So that means hopefully on the evolution way, but changes for the whole industry. What that means, probably there is I'm representative, of course, of the old economy and the banks which are on this market from the more than 100 years. But there is a challenge or the chance for the newcomers to set up the let's say the new trends or the new niches on the market. So this is also interesting for us. It will be the competitors' pressure, probably the new quality of them can be brought on the market. And then there is also sort of the elements which are just simply saying and sort of the mission that what we can do now is by the clever and sustained financing, we can materially add to the better food system and to the better future for the world. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bartosz. Very nice insights, and very great to see that the trends that were presented by Per are somehow, aligned directly. It's one of the biggest financial institutions in Europe at BNP, and how you're aligning it, directly to some of the strategies there. If there are, any questions from the audience, feel free directly, to ask them to Bartek, to post them in the chat, and we'll try to make sure that Bartosz will get back to them. For the moment, I guess we can skip directly to the next speaker, having Eric as well here on the line. But in the meantime, when there will be questions, we can dedicate some time after Eric as well to Bartosz to answer probably one or two questions. So we have asked Eric to give a bit more perspective on one of the let's say trends that is right now happening around the globe, and it's obviously the sustainability and its journey applied at Swedbank, especially around agricultural banking. So Eric, the floor is yours. Happy to have you as well on the line, and looking forward to some of the insights that you are going to share with us.
Thank you for that, Lucas, and happy to say also that the alignment luckily will also continue throughout this presentation, having listened to the previous speakers, and that's good that we share the common view of the world and where we're active. So thank you for the opportunity to present how Swedbank now is working with sustainability related to agriculture. You can take the next slide there. Just a short background. I mean, Swedbank, we have decided to contribute to the transition towards a more sustainable society. To us, climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time. And the climate change has an impact on the society, on our customers, and also puts our bank at higher risk. Hence, we have all the incentives to act on that. Like we heard before, what we eat and how that food is produced has an important role when it comes to climate change. And with the 200 years of experience from working with clients in the agriculture sector, we will support agriculture in this transition. Take the next slide. But sustainability related to agriculture is more than climate change. It touches, as you can see, and as you most likely know, upon several of the UN sustainable goals, such as zero hunger, life on land, poverty, and the list can be made long. We need to understand and consider that if we want to achieve sustainability and a sustainable society on a global in a global level. In the home market of Swedbank, Sweden and the Baltic states, we are fortunate enough to have food on the table and wealth enough to put more focus into climate change compared to other parts of the world. You can take the next slide. In Sweden, the target is to reach net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2045. This will require a lot of reduction in almost all sectors. The only exception to net zero emissions is agriculture. However, that by no means means that it will be easier or impose less challenges for the agriculture sector going forward, like we also heard just before. You can take the next slide. The main reason for agriculture being an exception to that is that approximately 90% of the emission derives from biological processes, such as land use and animal digestion, mainly then from cattle, as we also heard before, while approximately 10% is fossil-based emissions. Hence, it's not really possible to reach net zero in agriculture, given the large proportion of biological emissions. Nevertheless, agriculture contributes directly with approximately 13% of the total greenhouse emissions in Sweden. And there are many ways in which the sector can lower its emissions. You can take the next slide. When we have assessed the risk associated with climate change in agriculture, we find several risk drivers. We have heard about many of them in the previous presentation as well, but the first one relates to political and governmental incentives to change. Globally, it is a higher focus via the Paris Agreement, via UN sustainability targets. Regional, we see the EU growth strategy, the Green Deal, coupled with the From Farm to Fork strategy, which is more directly to the primary producers. We also have an upcoming new common agriculture policy where we know that it's going to be more incentives towards sustainability and related to agriculture. Also, we heard Per talking about the EU taxonomy, which is a directive which aims to allocate capital towards more sustainable investments, and where the target is mainly the banks and not the agriculture sector itself. In Sweden, also shortly, we have a food strategy which aims to increase our food production in a more sustainable way. The second driver, which we also heard about before, is consumer behavior. In Sweden and also globally, consumer becomes more aware of what they eat and choose food depending on how sustainable and healthy it is produced. We also see increased risks on farm related to changed climate, which leads to more extreme weather, new pests and diseases. And we all know farmers are used to challenging weather, but the changed climate will be different, and it will be important to understand the on-farm circumstances and its capacity to deal with those changes. Like we also heard before, technology change will also play a role in this. It will be important to understand what the new technology that will be available and how that can contribute to improvements on farm. This may be more of an enabler, but it can be viewed as a risk when it comes to potential technology shifts and possible stranded assets related to that, which also we heard in the previous presentation. So combined, these are all risk drivers, if you like, but there are also strong incentives for the sector to adapt, both to manage the changed climate and to be compliant with the governmental expectations and consumer demand. Primarily, you argue that this is a risk for the sector, but it is equally a risk for us as a bank if we do not understand this and if we do not take any actions. So if you go to the next slide and look on, okay, how have Swedbank approached this? We have taken a three-step approach, but we try to work simultaneously on all approaches or all steps at the same time. We want to achieve impact immediately. So phase one, that is to communicate and promote investments that can have a here and now impact. For example, electrified tractor on farm, or reuse energy from milk cooling and so on. Typically, these investment aims to reduce fossil emissions. You remember I elaborated with that earlier. We're aiming at rather small investments so that investment decisions can be made faster. We're also very cautious that this is not a greenwash, as we want to make sure that the activities or investments have scientifically proven climate impact effect. What is general for all these three phases is that we put a lot of focus on internal education. We need to understand and know what we talk about when we approach customers, both to be trustworthy, first of all, to be trustworthy towards our customers. When we're coming into phase two, we're aiming to more complex investments. You still see the slide? I continue. When you come into phase two, we're looking into more complex investments, focusing on efficiency and targeting biological greenhouse emissions. Here, the time perspective, I think that's important to stress, is longer before you see the climate benefit on farm compared to phase one. In phase three, we're we're focusing on developing ways of measuring climate impact on individual investments and on individual farms and on our portfolio. We should be able and have to be able to assure that individual investments contribute to improved climate impact. We should also understand how the impact of our customer to understand the impact on our portfolio and how that develops over time. That also lies in the alignment with the EU taxonomy. We also view this as a risk indicator in our lending portfolio. Just to finalize and sum it up, we're very humble to this because we know that there are so many things that we have to learn and still do not have the answer to, and this is a great challenge. But we're also very determined to contribute to a transition into more sustainable agriculture. Which is important is that we constantly revise and improve our analysis. We also understand that climate impact is only one thing. Biodiversity is also an important aspect, which together with many others will be addressed going forward. So by that, I say thank you for listening. And if there are any questions, you have my contact details or feel free to pop a question directly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Yes, as you mentioned, feel free, if anyone would like to ask a question directly right now to either Bartek or to Eric, happy to give some time, at least, for 5 minutes, if you have any further questions towards what we have seen from both of them. Feel free to raise a hand or write directly the question probably to the chat if you have any. There is a question from John, but I guess, since we have John among panelists, better than reading it in front of me, I would suggest that John would ask the question directly to Eric. John.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Lucas?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Good. So Eric, my question is, and as you pointed out, there's a common thread that runs through, all these presentations from different parts of the world. But in South Africa, as you would imagine, climate change is a major focus for us and a major risk area. And as banks look to support their clients in building sort of climate resilient farming businesses, we have such a major role to play in driving that change. But so what we've done, I think, quite well from Nedbank's point of view is, finance sort of renewable energy and water efficiency and soil health and so on, which is part of that. But I think what we're still grappling with is how do we start to include a sustainability score as part of our risk modeling. Much of our risk modeling is still very traditional and looks at financial performance, which is very important, no doubt. But as more of a forward-looking view, how do we build in sustainability and sort of climate resilience, to better assess the risk going forward? So I think that's my question. Thank you.
I can agree with you that we will have to do that. The answer is yes. And then how it should be done, that's what we are now working on. It's also going to be a part of the taxonomy to make sure that we can measure and present our climate footprints. I mean, again, the regulator also put a lot of demand on the bank in this respect. But again, this is, and again, I mean, the agriculture sector is also full of data. The question is how to put it all together and how to measure it and how to kind of put up and build algorithms that actually can make projections in the future. But that's easier said than done. But of course, that is, as I'm stressed in the phase 3, definitely our ambition, and somehow we're going there. But again, also it's good to have an open global maybe dialogue on this, because I also think it's equally fair to make the measurements at the same way, because otherwise you get a measurement which is not measurable with someone else, and that kind of puts us in an odd position. So I don't have an answer to that question, rather than that has to be in place, and we're working on that as well.
Good, very well done. Thank you so much, Eddie, as well for answering the question. If there are any further questions from the audience, feel free still to write them in the chat, because I guess Bartosz and Eddie are still staying with us even for the panel. But right now, I suggest that we'll give and receive a bit more perspective from the 4 panelists that we have invited here. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I'll pass the word to Per probably to take a lead in the facilitating and probably moderating the session, as he's more the expert. We are just trying to facilitate everything, put together questions and the proper panel. So let me just shortly introduce who we have here on the panel. So from the Far East Asia, we have Kaspar Situmorang, who is the CEO of BRI Agro, Bank Rakyat Indonesia. He'll share with us for the moment their agricultural banking strategy, but with the brand of BRI Agro, they're right now building something more appealing even for the digitization of the customers beyond. So he may definitely open the topic as well. We have on the call as well John Hudson, who is leading the agricultural segment in business banking department of Nedbank South Africa. Sergio Gutierrez, who is heading the agro bank of CaixaBank in Spain, and Sinan Kosovali, who is leading the agricultural banking marketing at DenizBank. So very glad to have the participation of 4 of you. And as I mentioned, in the beginning, right now, I would be happy to pass the word to Per to lead this session that we have prepared, a couple of questions for our panelists, and probably give a bit more the whole connecting the dots, giving the perspective. Per, heading up to you.
Thank you very much. And it's especially interesting to see the participation from the broad areas of the world in this discussion. And as you said formerly, I think it's very interesting to find that in the COVID times that we are in now, we can see some major trends that actually is totally global, and also it's forcing us to sort of adapt and develop. But I think we should start off with some more specific areas, I think, for the panel. And I would like to address the question that I think a lot of us thinks about, how you in your respective banks put your agriculture banking departments sort of in your organization, your structure, and how you address that in your organization. And I think from my perspective, I would like to invite you, Sergio, to start off with some of your CaixaBank's perspective. Sergio, you are muted.
Okay, do you hear me now? Yes?
Yes.
Perfect. Clear. Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Sergio Gutierrez. I'm the head of Agroban. Is part of the CaixaBank group. CaixaBank is the leading bank in Spain with almost 20 million customers. And Agroban is our specialized bank, being the leading agriculture bank in Spain with market shares above 30%. Okay, we created this trademark of Agroban in 2014, and since then we support the sector has been increasing, currently with more than 1,300 specialized agro branches, and with almost 500,000 agro customers in Spain. To answer your question, for us is a strategic sector. So the empowerment for Agroban is maximum in the CaixaBank group. Agroban reports directly in the structure to the general manager of business, a member of the board of directors of CaixaBank. In fact, of the Agroban strategy is based in 4 ideas, 4 principal ideas. The first of all is the more complete distribution model. I talk you about the 1,300 branches. with a specialized advisor in these branches and with a complementary digital channel. No? The second one is the most complete portfolio of financial and non-financial products or service in the Spanish banking. Okay. The third of all for us is very important is the action to promote the agriculture sector with sponsorship, conventions, and events such as Agrobahn Talks. In addition, we promote the sector through technical reports and publication in the Agrobahn magazine, as well as having an Agrobahn University program. Finally, I would like to highlight the contribution of our CaixaBank Foundation to the development of a project in the rural sector. And the fourth point, the fourth idea is the action to promote innovation and digital transformation of the agricultural sector and the development of the rural sector with a business solution adapted to the needs of agricultural customers. This is in a few minutes the main keys of our strategic and who is Agrobahn in the sector.
So is your agriculture department part of your SME banking business, or do you have some parts where you put closer to the private business or so on from your organization?
No, in that case, we have a global offer of product and service with the retail clients, with the businesses, and in this case, the corporate clients to all complete the agroalimentary chain. So we have a full complete offer.
Thank you. Sinan, I will move on to you. How is your agriculture business situated in the organization?
Thank you very much. DenizBank has been founded on 2002. It's agricultural banking organization. With the merge of Tarish Bank, it's a cooperative bank which has been established about 100 years ago in the West Anatolian part of Turkey. It's a farmers cooperative bank. And when the calendar shows 2002, with the merge of the Tarish Bank, DenizBank organized its agriculture banking department. It's a separate organization, not connected with SME or other activity areas. We are the leading private bank in Turkey with a market share of 45%. It's about the size of the other private banks. And when we combine the state banks in the calculation, our market share is about 12%. Of course, there are some subsidiary loans with the support of state that we can't compete, right? So we are using the market share between private banks mostly. And we have got 400 branches all over Turkey. We are the only bank having branches in every city of Turkey, except the state banks. We have a team of 1,000 people with headquarters and the branches and alternative distribution channels such as telemarketing channels or etc. As Turkey was the leading country of Europe in production amount and in the 10th place in the world in the production amount, it's a very important and crucial industry for Turkey. Some of the very rare industries that can make foreign trade surplus About 10% of the total employee works in the business or the related business, such as food or textile. So as it was an important industry for Turkey, we are really focusing hard on the supporting of farmers. Also, digitalization and integration with technologies is one of the topics we are focusing on. And I will tell projects and developments later on the other issues, I guess. So this is a short brief, I think, for DenizBank. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to hear from you, John. Where have you situated the agriculture business? How are you organized from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, I think Nedbank is a fairly recent entrant into the agricultural market. So the South African sort of agricultural sector in terms of finance is dominated by 4 big players. You know, we have quite a well-developed finance sector, but the 4 players that play in the agricultural space, you know, dominate the finance. So where we started out about 10 years ago, you know, some of our competitors have been in the financing game in terms of agriculture for, you know, well over 100 years. So as a recent entrant, we decided to enter the market really on the back of the financial crisis. You know, so that period, 2008 to 2010, we recognized that sort of agriculture, and it's been proved again during the pandemic, how important it is to the country in terms of GDP, employment, food security, etc. And therefore we decided to focus on agriculture. And over the last 8 to 10 years, we've taken our market share from well under 8% to around 19% now. So let's say a doubling in market share. Our focus at Nedbank Business Banking, and that's the sort of cluster that I fall under, is medium to large size commercial farming businesses, and that includes both the primary, so the farmers who produce the food, and then the secondary, whether it's input suppliers or the processors or the exporters, etc. So we've got a really wide spread across all the different subsectors. So whether it's, you know, field crops, sort of animal production, horticulture, and what we call secondary, the processing side of it, we do have a specific focus in terms of horticulture and more so in terms of tree crops, sort of export horticulture. You know, and with South Africa being quite a dominant player in citrus, for example, and macadamias and so on, it made sense for us because those are certainly growing sectors, and we're growing with those value chains. And then the other focus area for us outside of horticulture is the secondary or the agri production, and there our reasoning behind that was that the transactional revenue flow was much better than your primary producers. So, you know, you have a more even spread in terms of income streams. I think in terms of a South African context, sustainability is a big issue for us. It really is. And I think the farming sector at large understands that. They see it as part of their risk mitigation going forward. And then I think alongside that, in a South African context, is a transformation. So our sector is largely still white dominated, and with a low proportion of black producers in terms of the makeup of our sector. So a major focus on bringing through smallholder farmers and also creating you know, commercial black farmers. So I think those are 2 major things that dominate our sector in South Africa. And then just lastly, yes, I sit in business banking, where that's where most of our sort of agricultural expertise sits. We have a very dedicated, specialized focus. We've got specialized teams in terms of sort of in terms of agricultural personnel that support our frontline teams in either structuring deals or assisting with credit decisions, working through underlying assumptions. But outside of business banking, which is very much a partnership approach with a client where we look to add value, we have our corporate banking colleagues, large deals, structured finance, commodity finance, etc. And then we have our small business services as well, with a lower degree of specialization, but that is something that we're certainly working on as part of how we assist. In South Africa, we have 300,000 sort of small scale farmers, but only 30,000 odd commercial large scale farmers, so we've got this dual economy, and how do we bring the small scale into the mainstream is a major focus for us. So I think that's about it from Nedbank at this point.
Thank you for sharing with us, John. Let's move over to BRI Agro and Kaspar. Could you please fill in some info about how you structured your agriculture business within BRI Agro?
Right. Is it okay if I share some of the slides that we prepare for you guys?
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's try it. Give me 2 minutes. All right. Can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
So since 2017, we've tried to amplify the transformations within the agriculture in Indonesia, especially to digitize the whole Indonesian digital agriculture ecosystems by doing exploitations and explorations at the same time. So I try to, for the past few years, we keep doing and investing through our BRI venture capital arms. And also at the same time, we try to do lots of integrations with those digital agri-tech in Indonesia in order to be able to increase our yields and also reduce the NPLs and increase the credit quality, I think. So for the past few years, we've been trying to understand the global trends, especially in the agri-food tech for the past 3 to 4 years, especially back in 2020. The upstream investment has been increasing up to 68% year on year, right? Up to 50.8 billion, even surpassing the downstream investment for the first time on records, I think, for the past few years. And it's been incrementally great for a banking group as us. So especially on the agri-food tech in global, I think we've seen that this is no longer an early stage industries, right? So the first wave of innovators across those categories listed in here has been maturing and raising larger growth of stage rounds. For example, last year, we can see on the upstreams, there were 30% deals in 2020 and around about 15% deals in 2020 on the downstreams. And I think this has been a great time, I think, investing in the agri-food tech, as this is something that we've been doing for the past few years. And especially on the top funded agri-food tech, one of the global investment that we've seen, there's an Indonesian company over there by the name of Kopi Kenangan. That's a coffee shop, but has been franchised, and Serena Williams is also one of the investors over there. So it's been a blessing in Indonesian agri-tech scene in order to be able to amplify the trust of our investment over there. So, and I think, sorry, can you see my screen?
It's a bit.
Is it lagging?
It's lagging a bit, yeah.
Hang on, let me try to present it once again. Ein Moment. Okay, alles klar.
Yes.
Slide okay?
Yeah, now we can see it.
Right, all right. So those are the globals and the trends that we've seen in the agri-tech scenes across the world, right? And also one of them has been invested a lot. So if we pinpoint it to the traditional agri challenge in Indonesia, most of the problems are two, which is the PHL, the post-harvest losses, I think, which this is has been a tremendous problem, especially in Indonesia market scene in the agri business. So the PHL of horticulture's fresh product ranges from 20 to 50%. So this is damaging lots of the business in agribusiness. So we've been investing a lot in the supply chain management systems together with our venture capitals and the bank's arms and together with the customers itself. So we've been also building a lot of post-harvest standards across the ecosystems in Indonesia. And last but not least, we're trying to also influence the national level policy in order to be able to do the market accessibility, the access to the financial capital, which is us as a bank. And last but not least, of course, improving the technical resources, whether it's importing from the US or from the Europe's, or some of the technology that we requires in order to be able to make the productions and post-harvest better. So yeah, I think those three things that we've been doing for the past few years, especially on the upstreams, using those kind of biotech and lots of investment in the AIs as well, together with some of the agri-tech in Indonesia. And on the second cohort, which is the downstreams on the off farms, we also trying to improve the packaging tech and food tech. And also we've been investing and funding, providing a lending also on the distribution and the marketing and the marketing platforms to promote and introduce a better and more transparent buying processes. And last but not least, of course, we amplify the working capital loans, very huge for the past 5 years to all the farmers across Indonesia. And I think these capabilities right now has been available in Indonesian market scenes. So we try to combine within corporate scenes and startup scenes, and both for upstreams, downstreams, and also financing together with the peer-to-peer lending in Indonesia in order to be able to amplify the access of financial to all of the remote nationwide farmers in Indonesia. So in conclusions, Per, that the banking groups of BRI as the largest banks in Indonesia and the largest networks bank in Southeast Asia, we've been trying to amplify the distributions of working capital to all of the farmers across Indonesia. Last year, we distribute about $90 billion to 5.2 million farmers across Indonesia. And in the middle of the cohort, which is we keep also investing through our venture capital arms in order to be able to, find a better yield to get the better also visibility in our investment in terms of agri-tech. And last but not least, in the BRI Agro itself, we've been the major institutional lender together with the peer-to-peer lending in Indonesia, providing all of this financial access and capital to whole farmers networks in Indonesia. And last year, we've been trying to, do some sort of innovations in order to be able to introduce the blockchain technology to improve the quality of lending to sugarcane farmers in order to be able to solve some of the the supply chain phenomenon in Indonesia. The farmers, they're supposed to sell those sugarcanes to the factory. However, another factory trying to steal this kind of sugarcanes when it's harvest. So we tried to use the blockchains models last year in order to be able to, reduce this kind of defect and also reduce this kind of financing by introducing this kind of a blockchains together with the largest sugarcane factories in Indonesia, which is the state-owned enterprise as well. So yeah, I think last but not least, we're trying to doing exploitations and explorations in agriculture in Indonesia by amplifying the digital agri-tech across nationwide together with the startups and also with the fintechs in Indonesia. I hope that could give you some sort of a progress and works that we've been done in Indonesia in order to be able to amplify the agri-tech and also the agribusiness in Indonesia. Back to you, Per.
So if I understand you right then, Kasper, then you are a sort of a non-traditional bank from the aspect how you finance the agriculture segment. So it's quite different, I would say, as I see John and Sergio and Sinan from that perspective. So thank you for that. Interesting to hear about your work and also a bit about how you explore where you can make change and affect the agriculture market. Then we will get back a bit to the agriculture trends and how you approach the upcoming global trends in agriculture, sort of interest of land, sustainability, regulation, and digitalization. How do you approach sort of getting the trends and how to sort of try to get into your organization, how you process it? Not exactly all the trends, but more of how do you take care of it and explore it and see how you can use it. I'm looking at you, John, right now. You can't see that from your perspective, but I would like to hear a bit about from your South African perspective. How do you work there?
Yeah, so Per, I think what has emerged in South Africa, and it really came to the fore at the start of the pandemic. I think we've always had a fairly well-structured sector, banking sector as well as an agricultural sector. I'm talking more from a commercial point of view, and I'll just highlight maybe what has come out of it since, well, about a year ago, is that at the start of the pandemic, what really came to the fore was that the sector came together, both private and public. So government stakeholders, along with the private sector, realizes that we needed to work together in getting through the pandemic. And I think at that point, no one knew what was hitting us. A year down the line, we know a little bit more, but not a whole lot. But really what has been very pleasing is that we've seen a lot of progress made between government and private sector, where firstly, the communication has been much better. And I think this age of the pandemic has certainly brought that about, like this discussion. And it's also, I think, so agriculture came through it very well in terms of the perception in the marketplace. So we came through it very well in terms of South Africa. I mean, we showed growth of in our context, very good, 13.1% growth from an agricultural sector point of view, whereas no other sector had positive growth. They were all negative. And then, of course, food security and employment were such important issues as well. And I think this has almost spearheaded a much better discussion between private and public sector. And it's on a number of fronts. So we've got, as I said earlier, not only sustainability, but transformation and how we build an inclusive sector. A lot of work done of that, master plans, subsector master plans. We're starting to tackle challenges of opening up markets, new markets in terms of exports, because we've seen a massive investment in South Africa into sort of export crops. So we actually export more than 50% of what we produce. But we an export-orientated sector in South Africa with very low levels of support. So I think highly competitive on the world markets. And so all of this does present some challenge, like market access, like some of the issues that you mentioned earlier, traceability and so on. And certainly technology and the role that technology plays is part of that. I just want to come back there and mention one last thing. Nothing beats that interaction between people. And I think that technology is often just complements a process, but you have to get that partnership approach going. And you have to, whether it's with sort of industry stakeholders or with your farming clients, nothing beats that personal level of interaction, because after all, food is a tangible product. You can't pick citrus or avos by a virtual platform, etc. And the whole chain just involves people. So I think from a South African point of view, we've certainly realized that it is such an important sector for us going forward. It's a small percentage of our GDP, only 2.5% of our GDP. But if you take the linkages and the agro-processing and the employment and everything else, strategically, it's very important, hence our specialization. So we have continual strategy discussions around agriculture as part of business banking. But in terms of agriculture, our specialist approach starts to touch on many of these things that I'm talking about. And we build that into our customer value proposition and in terms of how we engage with our client base. And then I did make mention it earlier, is that we do have this dual economy in South Africa, the big, large-scale, world-class farmers, and then 300 or so thousand small-scale farmers and another 2.5 million subsistence household farmers. There's a massive focus on understanding that market. I don't think we pretend to understand our informal economy in South Africa and how the food economy plays a role in that. So a lot of research going into understanding the economy and the informal economy, and how technology plays a role in us resolving some of those challenges and really assisting that market to be fully recognized as it should be, and making their transaction costs so much lower. Because the transaction cost is fine in the developed agricultural sense. They've got the economy of scale, but when you're at the other end, you need to think of it differently. And hence, I was very interested in the sort of BRI presentation.
Thank you. Of course, it's a really important area in agricultural production and also exports. And I think if I move over to you, Sinan, from a Turkish perspective, it's also a very important area. So how have you adopted from the sort of international trends during this last period?
As you may well know, we are in the homeland of the agricultural revolution. Southeast part of Turkey is a major part of fertile crescent, and a kind of information, we call it wisdom of farmers or archaic information. It's really common in Turkey. It's almost, it's very often useful for farmers. For instance, if soil is too salty, they seed spinach to lower the saltiness of the soil. This is something scientific, but it's not the result of a scientific research. It's something coming from ancient know-how. But it sometimes conflicts with scientific knowledge. So to boost the productivity of the land and to reduce the cost, which is very important for farmers, smart farming and precision agriculture is now important and will be more important day by day. We compete with climate change. We need to protect the natural resources, and meantime we have to feed more people. The population is rising worldwide every day. So smart farming and precision agriculture is the main trend and the main topic in Turkey for now, and it will affect the economy and industry more and more every day. We, as DenizBank, have created a Facebook page back in 2015, just to give questionable, valid, and scientific information to farmers. We have positioned our bank back in the business, out of the scope, and just position our Facebook page like a news portal to spread the news, just like upcoming meteorological situations, weather forecasts, grant and support from the state declarations, and export-import news, and alternative production methods. So in a very short time, we have reached more than 100,000 users, and we have responded a lot of questions coming from farmers. And we have decided to create a more sophisticated and personalized tool to help the farmers. Back in 2017, we have released our mobile application, Denizden Toprağı. It was also the winner of the EFMA DMI Awards Best New Product in the 2017. There are some features we are helping farmers about smart farming, not just helping, but also being a part of the transformation and supporting the transformation. There there is a feature, we call it phenological engine. It basically simulates the growth process of the plant with a special algorithm and generate advices for each phase, like irrigation, fertilization, etc. We have a online tool for farmers can ask their questions to the agricultural engineers. In Turkey, farmers geographically live far away from city centers, so it's not too easy to reach the agricultural engineers every day. We have created an online tool for them to ask their questions and get their response back within 2 hours. We have
I see that you've been putting on a lot of effort to sort of support in their production and cost efficiency and so on, sort of outside the banking perspective, as you describe it. Sorry for being a little bit harsh about the time here, but I would like, before we end up with no time left, I would like to ask you the question about, very briefly mention top 2, 3 best practice projects that you've done in agribanking sort of in the recent time. I think that's something that will interest the audience here. And I would like to, I'd start with you, Kasper. Could you address some short areas where you sort of have done great progress with interesting findings?
Thank you, Per. I think there are 2 interesting projects that we've done for the past few years. I think the first one, I think the one that I've already explained to you earlier, is about how do we solve some sort of a supply chain phenomenon problems in Indonesia, native cultures, I think. So we work together with one of the largest manufacturers of sugar in Indonesia. So we create some sort of a, we call it taboo chains. That's a sugarcane chains. We're using technology of blockchains. We are able to, improve the quality of lending to sugarcane farmers and solving those, stealing the sugarcane phenomenon when the sugarcane farmers are unable to, pay their cost, pay their rent, pay their stuff, because, when the price was down and someone have to do their jobs, right? They have to find the biggest off-takers. So that's why we are some sort of locking this kind of supply chain problems with those blockchain solutions, and very good solutions that we've figured it out. And last year we've get clear results where the loyalty of the sugarcane farmers has been increased up to 45%. Therefore, the sugarcane factory are very happy, and we work together to disburse more and more of lending to not only to the sugarcane farmers, but also to the sugarcane factory in order to be able to manufacture the sugar. So we got a bump increase last year by introducing this kind of advanced blockchain solutions. And the second one that was also impressive solutions and results last year that we've seen, that how we are able to work together, collaborations together with the peer-to-peer lendings in Indonesia, because our network is also limited, and there's some sort of a new kind of emerging, we call it millennial farmers across Indonesia nationwide. So this kind of millennials, they've already figured it out that when the banks close their doors, right? So they figured out a way to connect with the peer-to-peer lending, which focus on agribusiness. And then they start to kind of manufacture some sort of a financing together with the peer-to-peer. But we also work as an institutional lender with those peer-to-peer. So we combine all together our underwriting models. And last year, we tried to provide up to 2 trillion rupiah to those kind of peer-to-peer lending, and with 0 NPLs. So I think it's amazing progress, working collaborations with them. And the yield is amazing, I think, up to 18%. So it's amazing, not only financially, but also socially. We're trying to amplify the financial inclusions across Indonesia. Back to you, Per.
Yeah, you have both structure and also taking care of the customer in a very proactive way, I think, especially with the blockchain perspective. And also the other one where you can address and add up with more risk capital to sort of support better investments and also taking larger steps, especially with young farmers, if I understand you right, Kaspar?
That's correct.
So have you got some 2, 3 short, briefly things to share with us?
Okay, first of all, I want to talk something I think that is important. No? There is an ever increasing need to invest in agriculture due to address the rise in global population and changing preference of the growing middle class in emerging markets. No, in addition, the climate risk increase, and we estimate maybe you can read in some papers. No, the estimation suggests that the demand for food will increase by 70% by 2050. Okay, so we have a very big challenge. No, in that case, we must improve for me, the most important thing is that we must improve the crop productivity and also make them sustainable. This evolution of the agriculture sector can only be carried out by the incorporation, innovation, and digitalization. In that case, here in Spain, in Europe, you know that we have a very straight evolution of the common agriculture policy. So in the next 2023, all this requirement we are be present here in this policy. No, for us the technology will be a great ally to convert this challenge into opportunities. Okay, in 3 ideas. No, with the technological revolution that is called to transform the whole food chain from the exploitation of data and the use of drones to achieve a more efficient and sustainable harvest, to the use of blockchain technology, like Kaspar said before, and to improve, in that case, the traceability of the food products that reach our phones. No, the digital transformation in the agri-food sector must consider, I think, that all the actors in the food value chains, and one challenge that we have is the different speed with the different companies and farms are going to advance in the process to adopting these new technologies. We are working in that case in industrial agriculture. We are working in some solution about blockchains in the food value chain, and we are working in precision agriculture for kind of and in that case product to the different actor of the agriculture ecosystem. No, if we talk about best practice or manage agriculture, I think that we must look for the promotion of more sustainable production process. No, energy and water use efficiency, the limited pesticide residue. Only businesses that undertake the energy transition successfully will be able to compete in a new environment in which sustainability will be an essential requirement to continue operating in this market. No, and the second thing is in the other hand, the agricultural banking needs to promote the new technological revolution with the solution of agrotech. No, adoption of new digital technologies, Internet of Things, big data or computer in the cloud, for an intelligent automation in the fields, in the farm, and in the factories. No, in the bank sector, I think that we must adapt to different products to satisfy the new needs of our customers. No, I talked in the beginning of my speech that we are offering financial or not financial products and service. Okay, I think that this is one of the challenge that we have the agro banks. No, last, we are starting to take environmental risks into account in our decision-making process in the risk operation. No, we are starting the green finance, and I think that is important to close the ecosystems of agro and bank support. I think that that's all. I think that the fourth important point for maybe here in Spain and Europe is the recovery, transformation, resilient plan from the European Union. We must focus in the specialized agriculture supply. We must focus in the new customer habits with physical and digital banking. Everybody is talking about the digital banking, but one of the strengths of our model is to be very close, very near of our final clients, no, and to get in that case advice for all of them. And nobody talk about an issue that for me is very important, no? That is the responsibility that we have in the challenge of the financial and rural inclusion. We must work to improve the rural world, the rural sector, to consider that the population is not going to only to the big city, that they have a complete life and work in the rural places.
Thank you, Sergio. John, we'll have a short last brief session with you regarding what is your takeaways that has been most successful things that you've done during the last year here from your perspective that you'd like to share with us.
Thank you. So I think what has certainly been driving us is the adoption of technology by our clients. Absolutely no doubt in my mind that the adoption of technology has kept many of our clients in business. So it's, just from a cost price squeeze impact. And that has sort of spilt over. This whole adoption of technology, I think in agriculture has been going on forever. And it's only just, sort of gathering pace. And that as a bank, I just say though that I still think the partnership and the relationships are important, but the technology is what really allows you to possibly leapfrog or to better or to continuously improve. And one good example, or there's a couple from our point of view, but we have partnered with fintechs or sort of ag tech companies. And one good example is actually Aerobotics. So Aerobotics is a South African Cape Town based company. They look at orchard health in particular down to a per tree level, and they focus on tree crops. And they use drones and satellite sort of imagery to determine orchard health. And for that, we feel that's really important as part of the future. And we've taken a stake in their business. So it's not just showing interest, we've taken a stake. I think what we then need to do on the back end is what do we do with the data? And it's been mentioned a few times around, so what are we doing with the data? And I think that's our big challenge, certainly at Nedbank, is how do we make better use of the data from a decision-making point of view, et cetera, et cetera. The other that we've really done well in, and we've launched Nedbank. It's not only for agriculture. We've got what we call an Avo platform. It's not the sort of agricultural product, but Avo is our platform. It's a business to business and a business to client platform, which brings buyers and sellers or businesses together across value chains. We're really exploring that platform as to how it can facilitate engagement within the agricultural sector. Really, really important for us going forward, and a lot of good discussion happening there. Our partnership with the Worldwide Fund for Nature goes back 30 years in Nedbank, but in the last 8 years in terms of agriculture. That's looking at climate change, sustainability, how we package it, how we bring it to our clients, how we introduce things like water, energy, and soil, and of course, food waste. A lot of work going into food waste as well. And Not that we are necessarily focused on food waste per se, but it's so important for us as a sector to reduce food waste and thereby help reduce carbon emissions as well. So a massive focus around that. I fully agree with that rural community and the health of our rural communities. It's in South Africa, it's the same challenge. We sort of unemployment levels are high. The investment back into our rural communities is paramount. And for Nedbank, that's important as well. That doesn't necessarily have a technology angle to it, but it could. And that's just healthy for our sector and for the society. And then transformation, quite interestingly, a lot of good engagement with government, a lot of blended fund schemes where grant funding is combined with debt funding. So some very encouraging signals around transformation and the inclusivity of our sector and how we ensure that they are sustainable and also financially sustainable going forward. So those are a few snippets from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. And from the discussion that we just had here, I think that what we can see is that a lot of you banks, and also what we see from others, is that you engage in the sort of in the ecosystem around the farmers, the agriculture system, instead of only going into financing and sort of traditional advisory and banking. And I think that will be part of the new ecosystem where you have to sort of integrate and combine and coordinate and work together with other sort of actors in the ecosystem. So that is really interesting to hear about. With that, we'll wrap up the panel discussion, and I'll leave you, Lucas, to do the sort of exit of the banking session.
Wonderful, Per. Thank you so much for taking a lead for this session. We have heard some wonderful examples on how banks are actually approaching the whole agricultural trends and probably best practices. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the time flies quite fast, and we cannot actually give everyone enough space. Nevertheless, I have a very good actually news, because we want to continue with at least gaining those insights that you mentioned for the interview series that I'll mention in the upcoming slides. As I mentioned, this event, SME Banking Coffee, is part of the events calendar of our SME Banking community, which we are organizing. Look forward to some of our sessions that we have in the Q3, Q4. Have a look at it. This session is recorded, and you will have access later on to the recording. If we go one slide back, I already mentioned, the interview series that we wanna. Apologies, really, that's not the one there. Anyway, what I would like to just finalize and wrap up this session is that we will be doing an interview series on agricultural business banking, and probably some of the key highlights of the projects that different banks are doing. And we'll approach all 4 speakers we had in the panel, plus obviously some other institution, just to create a benchmark on what is the direction and what are the coverage of different agricultural businesses in different banks across the world. Now, as I mentioned, this session is being recorded. You will have afterwards the access. You can share it with your colleagues, share it on the social network, because I think some of the insights that you share were really extremely useful for some of the other bankers and participants that either we had online or those that will have a chance to later on listen and seeing the video. Thank you so much once again to all the speakers that we had the pleasure to welcome today. Thank you as well to Per for helping us facilitating the session. So just to sum it up, thank you to Bartosz from BGS BNP Paribas. Thank you to Eric from Swedbank, Kaspar from BRI, then Sinan from Danish Bank, John from Nedbank, and as well to who I have forgotten now this time. Well, Sergio, obviously from CaixaBank. So it was wonderful morning or afternoon to those who actually joined us from different geographies, and hopefully you have found one key takeaway that you can apply in your banking. Thank you so much. It's all from our side, and thanks to all the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Per, for moderating.